Could we have Stephen Howard from Keep Our Assets Canterbury?
Māori ora ki te rangi, Māori ora ki te pakatunuku, Māori ora ki te kaipakahari o Aotautahi. Ko te pipi te tuatahi, ko te kaunuku te tuarua. So here we are again. Another 3 years and Aotautahi has had some good recovery, but there's still a lot of damage. Most of you will be aware of Koa Canterbury, a loose group of various interest parties and individuals committed to keeping public assets public. My name's Stephen Howard, and with me today is Murray Horton. We need to congratulate you. You've held on to some assets, but others are still under attack. Koa has long seen democracy as one of the assets under attack. After an event such as our earthquakes, a city is vulnerable to attack by crisis capitalism. Decisions are often made for the people of the city rather than by them. We see this strongly in the case of the Northern Expressway, which I'll return to, and ECAN still hasn't recovered its democracy. We do have hopes that the change in government will give the council good opportunities to resist further attacks on democracy and in fact all our assets. With the raft of daily announcements, it's a bit hard to keep up sometimes. We note that the council says that holding on to city care has reduced some funding opportunities, but maybe there's a guarantee of a further flow of funding in the long term. We actually congratulate you to holding on to city care. Monday's announcement that city care had been performing below par raises some questions as to whether a council-owned entity should be pursuing empire-building activities all over the country. It would be better aligned with council strategy were it a works department. The alternative source of funding that the council should speak more about, and more often, and more loudly, is of course the renegotiation of the cost share agreement. The present agreement looked unfair and mean when it was set, but even more so after Cam Preston's report on how much the central government had taken from the city net. If the central government had spent the monies promised, then a faster and higher quality recovery could have been achieved. We realise that the council can't budget or plan on a generous settlement with central government, but we urge the council to pursue it hard, and note that the draft plan doesn't have a position on what the outcome may be. Koa supports a campaign for a special rate on off-licence premises, as well as a small increase in income. This would help with some of the city's house problems, still with income but moving into homes. Koa recommends following the Vancouver plan of increasing rates charges on empty homes and undeveloped blocks. An empty home tax would mean a large number of ghost homes would be available to rent at a time when homes are desperately needed. We'd also like to see the council repair or replace those housing units damaged in the earthquake. With the central government committed to fixing the housing crisis, this is the city's big opportunity to get it right in council-owned public housing. Ensuring a supply of decent, secure tenancy public rental homes is a core council function. Koa welcomes the advance in the planning of the Metro Sports facility, but still opposes the use of council funds to support the stadium proposed to be built for the rugby union. Since professionalism, the New Zealand Rugby Union is just another entertainment business. If the stadium could pay for itself, that business would be funding it and running the stadium from income. The 250 million or so that the stadium is money better used to complete and improve infrastructure. Koa insists that council function is to work for the people of Christchurch, not build a nice-to-have liability like a stadium. Housing, transport and water are more important to the people of Christchurch. Koa is concerned that although building the convention centre is to be funded by central government, it's unclear who will fund the managing of it. These centres are almost globally loss-making white elephants. Again, if business sees a profit to be made from such a building, let them fund and manage the running of it. They can't see a profit, so you will not see them asking to run it. Living wage, and I'm aware that one councillor said he's not committed to the living wage in today's press, completely supports the council Koa completely supports the council establishing living wage, but it must be pushed out to all the council-owned and controlled entities. This should be funded with a sinking lid on salaries above 4 times the living wage. Driving wages down is one motive of PPPs, and outsourcing the delivery of public services is one paid from taxes and rates. Transferring risks to the public while ensuring private profits is the other. I see in relation to city care that the entity's top salaries are very generous. Questions must be asked as to why public services support such an overly generous salaries. The whakatauki ko te pepe refers to a thin end of the wedge, and PPPs are the thin end of the wedge to drive the privatisation of public assets. The Northern Transport Express Way was rejected more than once by the citizens of Ōtautahi, but it's being pushed through now by NZTA while the people are distracted by recovery. It's a great example of crisis capitalism. COA supports free public transport as it would be cheaper overall than building huge motorways for that sunset technology, the automobile. We'd also like to see a focus on good cycleways, footpaths and public transport. The Copenhagen system of spending on these areas, those areas where you'd like people to use public transport is a good option. And just to finish on a personal note, my daughter is a regular cyclist on her way to Women's Hospital to help deliver some of the city's babies. She lives in Woolston, the Huda as she calls it, and uses the cycleway on Ferry Road. She makes a contrast between the flash routes being developed for the folk on the hill and the summer Sunday morning latte drinkers, and the potholes and dangerously narrow lanes on the working commuters using Ferry Road. And thank you very much for your time.
I'd just like to add on the stadium that I think that this is an area where we're going to see pressure put on the council to actually sell off assets to raise the $253 million for this white elephant. COA would agree entirely with the statement earlier this year by Councillor Livingston that the council's priority needs to be areas like fixing up and replacing housing rather than putting $250 million into the most elephantine of white elephants. And there is a myth going around about this stadium, namely that, quote, if Christchurch had had a covered stadium or a new stadium, then the Lions would have played the All Blacks here last year. No, they wouldn't. The Rugby Union in 2015 announced the itinerary for the 2017 Lions tour, and one thing that stood out was that for the first time in a century, there would have been no All Black tests anywhere in the South Island. The 3 tests in 2017 were played in Auckland and Wellington. They said they would avoid Christchurch, the Rugby Union, not only because there was no stadium here suitable for them, the one in Addington not being up to scratch from their point of view, but because the whole city was not up to the Rugby Union standards. So did the All Blacks play the Lions in Dunedin, which has got the only covered stadium in New Zealand, the newest stadium? No, they didn't, because the New Zealand Rugby Union announced that the stadium was irrelevant to their deliberations, that the entire city of Dunedin was not up to scratch. It wasn't big enough to handle the infrastructure required, the number of fans travelling, etc. And it was pointed out in the media at the time that how long will it be before all Black tests at home are only played in Eden Park in exactly the same way that all England rugby tests are played in Twickenham. So if you want to put money into a stadium, Christchurch City Council, give the money to Auckland to put a roof on Eden Park, because that's where the Rugby Union will be playing the games. It's only a week ago that on television I watched a game played between Auckland, the Blues and the Hagawaris, and it was played in absolutely torrential rain. 1 week ago, to the point where the commentators were saying they had difficulty seeing what was going on the field. Not one word of clamour in the media or in the Auckland local body to say, let's put a roof over Eden Park. They just played it because rugby's an outdoor game. If the Rugby Union is so bloody keen to have a stadium here, let them pay for it. They're boasting now of the enormous profit they made from the Lions tour. And in terms of these events that we're told we're missing out on, Ed Sheeran and co, etc., all over the front page of the press the other day, what's one of the things that attracts those people there? They're paid incentives by the City Council or the City Council events body down there. That's a classic example of corporate welfare. So if you want to attract events to Christchurch, just go and hand out money to the barkeepers and to the entertainment providers. That's a direct way of doing it. Put a roof on Eden Park, hand out money to the pub owners in Christchurch. That's the way to do it. The stadium's a white elephant. We're not saying don't have it, but it doesn't need to be stuck right up the priorities on the long-term plan. It belongs in the next decade. I speak as a rugby fan that regularly goes to the stadium in Addington. I was there on the wettest, stormiest night last year when the City Council declared a state of emergency because of flooding. So it's perfectly adequate for the purposes, and I intend to go back again in the next few weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I'm with 15 seconds to go. I think that's, I'm sorry, there's not really enough time for questions. But look, thank you very much for making the effort to come in. We always appreciate the interest that you take in the long-term plan process. So thank you very much.
Kia kaha.
Kia kaha.